All right, red, white, and ruthless. This is number, man, I think we're at 24 now. Today we've got a guest here, Brent Burkhart. We are going to talk about some CDCR issues. And Brent and I have spoken earlier and kind of gone through some things, and we're gonna cover that today. Brent, go ahead and if you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started, and we'll get this thing going, man.
All right. Hi, yeah, my name's Brent Burkhart. I started back in '97. I worked a couple years at Sierra Conservation Center, then transferred over to DVI. Did about 15 years there. Worked as an officer for about half my time there. Promoted to sergeant. Went to promoted to lieutenant back in like 2014. Worked at headquarters for a little bit, then worked over at CHCF in Stockton for about 4 or 5 years. Did a little bit of time at SOMS, then went back up to headquarters in 2021 and promoted to captain in 2022. After I promoted to captain, at headquarters, I started this new unit called the Public Records Act unit. And, it was something new for the department, so built that up and worked there for a few years until about the beginning of 2023, and then started to have a few issues and things of that nature. I ended up actually retiring April of 2025, so that was awesome.
Yeah. So I like to ask people, what was your favorite job for rank?
Oh man,
Good
that's a tough.
question, huh?
It is
Yeah,
a good
it's a tough
question.
one.
It's I'd say it's a little bit of a tie between lieutenant and captain. I had a couple spots that I worked at as a lieutenant that I was really happy and I enjoyed it, and that was mostly because of my bosses.
Yeah,
Um,
makes a
when I
big
was
difference.
it does. When I was a captain and I started the new unit and kind of built that up, that one's tied for first because I got to do all the things that I never got to do before, and avoid all the pitfalls, or at least some of them that I was capable of avoiding.
Right.
Avoid a lot of the pitfalls and do a lot of the things different that, as you're coming up in the department, you're like, oh, it should have been like this and it should have been like that. Why are we still doing this weird stuff? So I, kind of transitioned away from a lot of those things and bad habits. And, I really enjoyed what I was doing too, the work for the time that I was there.
Yeah, I think for me, I did really like being an officer, um, but as I progressed, probably like you, like lieutenant captain, AW was the lick too. Um,
Mm,
I think you're right though. I think it really depended on my boss. Because you could have a great job, but if you got a terrible boss, your job just sucks, man.
it
And we
does.
we went through. I mean, you were at CHCF long enough to know that we went through so many wardens and chiefs and AWs. I counted them at one time, and we were well into 30 different manager changes. At
Oh,
that point, I mean, it was insane, and they wondered why we were having issues there, and
yeah,
there's
there
just
was
no
no
consistency.
consistency.
Yes. So yeah, I'd like to ask that question, and it's different for everybody, but yeah. So I want to get into your issue that you had with the department. So you're going along, you're captain in headquarters at your public records position, and that's correct, right? So
Yep.
far, and you notice you're having some issues with a lieutenant, and you notice that the lieutenant has documented an additional significant amount of overtime that the lieutenant didn't actually work. Is that correct?
It is.
Yeah. So you did what you were supposed to do. You documented that, you verified it all, you provided all of that information up your chain of command. And that's when it got weird, right?
Oh, it got really weird.
So tell us about that.
So I had this employee that we had an open lieutenant position. It had been vacant for a long time, and we hired this new employee, female employee, and started off like any other spot, doing training and getting people acclimated. And the stuff that we were doing, it wasn't, on the surface, it would seem kind of simple, but it had a lot of nuances, so it could get a little complicated. Started training, started working through the stuff, and the great part was, because this person went into a vacant position that had been open for a while, there was no hurry to rush training, so we could take our time. So we're going through the training, and we get to a point where our unit got approved for overtime, which was rare, to work on some projects that we had. It was related to redacting videos, blurring out faces, and stuff like that.
Right.
So we handed out overtime to all the staff, and I gave overtime to this one person. And this was like at the end of June or July of 23. Does that sound about right? 23? Yeah. And a couple months go by, and we set out all the expectations, very, very detailed expectations. And a couple months go by, and we're having this employee, their performance wasn't really that great. It was kind of going downhill. So there was a point where my boss and we had decided, hey, look, this is not working out. We've done everything we can. We've went through all the processes. We've given every opportunity, and this employee is just not doing well. So we said, hey, we're going to reject this person on probation. And so I kind of got the rundown from our ERO, and so I started gathering up information. And within the first day of gathering information and collecting all my notes, I realized the assignment that they had been given back in June and July, and this was like September now, still wasn't finished. And I was confused, because we all knew exactly how long it took to work on these projects, and roughly how long it took to complete an assignment of a specific length.
Right.
So I pulled up all the information. So we had an internal tracking log where everybody would log how much work they did each day and how much they accomplished. So I took a look at those, and then I looked at how much time they'd spent on it. And this employee had logged 36 hours of overtime to do something that should have only took about 15 to 20 max. Well, right. When I reviewed the work, I saw that not only were they not finished, they were only halfway done with the first of 3 videos they were supposed to work on.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
And all of them should only took about 15 or 20 hours. They're pretty simple. And so at that point, I was like, okay, I think I see something really wrong here. Let me take a deeper look. So we utilized a website to do the work. Mm-hmm. The website has an audit log of everything you do and every step you take.
Right.
It tracks all the changes that you make. Mm-hmm. So if you're not making changes, there's nothing to log. Right. So I pulled up the log, took a look at it. It took a minute to kind of like read through it and understand what it was saying. And this might not be exact, but it was something along the lines of, she logged like 15 days that she worked on the assignment for 15 days, totaling 36 hours. But in actuality, the log only supported that she worked on the stuff for maybe like 4 or 5 days. So I went through it, checked everything, cross-referenced all the stuff. I even contacted the website owners and asked them to pull a report on when this employee logged into the website. Because if you don't log into the website, you can't do any work. Right. And their login report correlated directly with the audit log that I pulled. So at this point, I gathered it all up, documented it all thoroughly. I basically did my own, without talking to the employee or violating any rights or anything. I gathered all the information, did my own little mini investigation. Sure. Showed it to my boss, and it was ironclad. Completely undeniable that this person worked claimed 36 hours, but they only worked about 10. And that was a generous 10.
So what do you think, or I'm sure you know probably the exact amount, how much money is that, the additional whatever amount of hours?
I want to say at lieutenant, I want to say at overtime rate, they were probably booking about $100 an hour. So you're looking $2,600, definitely in the
Right.
felony range.
Right. Significant. Yeah.
Yeah. And, when you're talking about, a simple task that wasn't complicated, just put the time in, right?
Right.
This is a new hire, new to our area, on probation. And at that point, my mind was blown. I realized that this individual had falsified tons of documents, claimed money that they didn't actually work, and basically was a dishonest, corrupt cop.
So what happened from that point? You document, you've got all of this evidence or information. You run it by your own supervisor, who agrees with your opinion that it was dishonest, and so it gets submitted. I would imagine up the chain of command too. There should be a hiring authority at some stage of the process there that should be reviewing it and deciding exactly what to do.
Yeah.
What happened then?
So our chain of command was, our unit was a little different. We had analysts, lieutenants, a captain, and an AW.
Mm-hmm.
After that, it went to I think it was the assistant deputy director. At the time, it was Mona Houston. And then after that, it was deputy director Jared Lozano. So our reporting structure was pretty direct and really short.
Right.
So I prepped an email, and I included, I prepped an email, and I put as much things as I could in DocuSign, made sure to PDF everything so you could see. And also included the originals, so you could see the originals in the PDF, so there was no shenanigans or appearance of shenanigans. And it was something like 5 or 6 page memo with, I don't know, 10, 15 pages of extra documentation. Emailed it all to Jared Lozano and Mona Houston. And this was back in October of that same year.
Yeah, and so just for the folks that are listening, so your job is to gather all the information available and come up with, formulate an opinion based on that information. But there's a process after what you do. So you're not saying it's 100%, the individual did it or didn't do it. You're providing enough information to warrant potentially either a direct adverse action if they determine that you've provided enough information, or an investigation. One or the other should happen at that point. So you put all this information together, provided it to, it sounds like Lozano was would be essentially in your chain of command, acting as the hiring authority. He was at that level. So he would be the one that would refer it for complete. He wouldn't necessarily complete the 989. He would have somebody do it, but basically that's a document that says, hey, we've got this situation. We believe that it warrants investigation or warrants a direct adverse, one or the other at that point. Is that kind of your take on what happened or what should have happened?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe technically it fell on Mona Houston to do the actual referral, but either her or Jared.
Yeah, they were certainly high enough in rank to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
And so what happened then? Did anything happen or?
So now, hindsight, because I learned a lot of the things about everything down the road, but I sent that to Mona in mid-October. And a few weeks later, she left. She got moved out of her position. And so the new person, Dawn Laurie, was coming in. So I resent all the stuff on like November 9th. I resent it to Jared and the director, Ron Broomfield, because I was like, hey, it's very likely this could have fell through the cracks. I know Mona wasn't, she had her own stuff going on, so she wasn't super,
So
involved.
this is about what, 4 months later or so?
Yeah, let's see. So I found it all out in September.
Okay. Sorry.
Yes, September. Then October is when I finished up with everything, because there was a lot of stuff going on, and sent it to Mona. So then I sent it again in November, early November, when I saw that Dawn was coming in.
Okay.
So I sent it on like the 9th, and then a few days later on like the Monday, Jared forwarded that email to Dawn and said, "Hey, I'm looping you in so you see what's going on." And so Dawn got all the stuff too. Now at this point, it basically fell on her lap to, do the referral process, work with Jared, just make sure, hey, send it to OIA, see what they think.
Yeah.
And
let it somebody be somebody at that point has to do a 989.
Yeah,
that's their job, is to have somebody and they, essentially they could have sent it back to you or your boss and said, "Hey, go ahead and do a 989 and include these documents, and shoot it back to us." And because it happens a lot of different ways. Sometimes ISU does them. Sometimes it's the area, the AW of the area. It doesn't really matter. But the hiring authority physically never does it, but they tell somebody to do it. So at that point, either Dawn or Jared, whoever was making the decision, should have had somebody do a 989 saying this warrants investigation or direct adverse. And it sounds like that didn't get done.
You're correct. It didn't get done. So I made sure everybody was in the loop, because here's the thing, right? My stance on that kind of stuff is I don't really like that kind of stuff, had some bad experiences in the department. So, hey, you know what? I get people make mistakes and stuff, but there's a difference between a mistake and a deliberate act. And at this point, for everything that I saw, it was deliberate. And so I knew that policy required me to report this, because if I didn't report it and tried to cover it up, I was putting my job on the line, and nobody's that important to me.
Yeah. You don't sign for overtime that what wasn't or didn't get done. I get if we're talking a couple hours and you're unclear, you may talk to the employee and say, "Hey, this is what I'm seeing," and blah blah blah, whatever. But that's pretty significant. And I think it's also important to know, because my opinion at this point, the hiring authority became aware of it, and nothing had occurred for at least a couple months. Now, the process is you have 30 days to submit a 989 from the time you find out about, the behavior or the act that occurred. So somebody sat on it for a while. And I guess that's where we're at in the story, is nothing is really getting done. So what happened at that point?
So and like I say, I learned this later through OIA documentation, but right after I had reported it to Jared and the director, and then he looped Dawn in, then at that point, all of a sudden I got put under investigation, not by Dawn, not by Jared, because they're the only people that I report to. They're the only people who have authority over me or everybody in my unit. But I got put under investigation by Associate Director Jennifer Benavides, because apparently she hadn't been the deputy director then. So I worked on the facility support side, which was all the people that supported the prison classification unit, population management unit, that sort of like more paperwork, whereas she was over on the facility operations, which directly dealt with the prison, the missions, the high security, daily interactions, and all that sort of stuff. So we were basically it's almost like we were in two different sides of the house, almost in two different buildings, kind of, so to speak.
Right. Sure.
So she put me under investigation, which she didn't have the authority to do because I didn't work for her.
Right.
And
so how did that work? How did you find out about that?
So I found out about that. So I got put under investigation like a couple days after I re-reported it to him, which to me made no sense.
Okay, gotcha. Sure. No, well, yeah, and I'm sorry, but it kind of makes sense to me.
Oh,
Um,
it made sense to me later.
yeah, later, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're getting it now,
Yeah.
but when it falls, so to me is when you re-reported it, it had obviously fell between the cracks, and nobody had elevated it to OIA. So you've got a
Right.
new boss. You got a new boss around who's saying, "Hey, what's going on with this?" Right? Because that's who you sent it to, correct? Is
Oh,
the new boss?
and
And go ahead.
and right about that time that Mona left, my boss, my AW left as well. So I
Right.
was, doing the AW role at the time. And so when Dawn came in, I gave her a full briefing of everything that was going on, including the whole rundown on all that stuff. Because,
Sure.
you're coming into a new spot. That's a lot to be thrown at you right through right on your first day in the door.
Right. Yeah. So what did they tell you you were under investigation for?
So as it turns out, um, a month before I discovered the misconduct by the employee, that person had they got their first performance evaluation, first probationary one, and it had a couple negatives, but it had a couple negatives and a write-up for disobeying direct orders. Well, they didn't like that, so they filed a fraudulent EEO complaint.
Mm,
And they had basically taken things, put their own spin on it, added some stuff in that was completely untrue, and and ran with it. Now,
right.
they filed that back in August, and it didn't go anywhere because nobody was
Right.
doing anything with it because there wasn't anything to it.
Right.
So it sat until November, and then for whatever reason, I mean, I have a long history with Jared Lozano. I've never liked him. You know,
Shocking.
yeah, shocking.
Yeah.
He's never liked me, but
Yeah.
only interact, brief periods where we work together in the same place. Well,
Yeah.
my only thought is that he saw this as an opportunity to mess with me. But instead of doing it himself, which was what he was required to do, he gave it to somebody who wasn't even allowed to, who didn't have jurisdiction over me.
Sure.
Because it's like if I work at a prison in San Francisco, the warden at a prison in LA can't make determinations on my, disciplinary action for me.
Right. So they can just so we're there are times where um hiring authorities I don't know how to put the term.
Farm out.
Yeah, they'll farm out um certain actions or what for whatever reason, I don't know. But they do that. Why they did it in this situation is really, really weird. Because you have they don't do it. So let's back up a little bit to the EEO issue. So the individual files an EEO issue, and they do absolutely nothing from the point of of the individual writing the EEO complaint. So what would normally happen in an EEO investigation is if they felt there was any validity to the claim, they would give like a cease and desist, or they would give some
Right.
type they would do something to let you know that, hey, this person has filed a complaint against your actions, whether or not they're happening or not. You need to stop. And they did
Yeah.
nothing. You didn't even know about the the EEO complaint until you had furthered the the complaint about the issue with the overtime. You had
Yeah.
no idea what was going on. So you've got this EEO issue laying around that nobody's dealing with, and then you've got the overtime complaint. Now, to me, it's pretty obvious. It's they laid down on the overtime. They didn't do anything with it. Now, which is against policy, and I get their headquarters. They're going to do whatever they're going to do. But
Right.
regardless, you look like shit if you sit around and wait on a fairly significant, fraudulent claim of overtime where a person's booking the state for an additional, $2,500 or whatever it is. And you do nothing about it. And you've got a new boss. So now you've got to explain why you didn't do anything about it. But you have this standby EEO complaint that you've got, oh, well, wait a minute. I thought this other was bullshit because we've got this EEO complaint that you never did anything with.
Right.
You didn't do anything with it until it became a useful tool in explaining why you were deficient in not submitting the complaint that essentially started it all is this, book in the state for an additional whole bunch of overtime,
Right.
So to me, it's really fucking clear. And I probably ought to interject right now I know Burkhart. I work with him, and when I first got this story, I didn't know who the hell it was. I knew the name. I was like, man, that sounds familiar, but I didn't see his picture, so I didn't put two and two together. And then once I saw his picture, he knows this because I apologized to him. I was like, and then I heard about the EO complaint. There's no fucking way this dude. I mean, this guy's as straight as a fucking arrow. All right, the EEO is like impossible. There's very few people I would say that about. But knowing this guy just as well as I did, I was like, oh, this is fucking bullshit. So I will say that is I know this guy well enough to know that in my interactions, I've never seen anything but 100% professionalism. So, and then I also know Lozano. And I worked for Lozano, and I didn't care for the guy. I probably have never met a more unqualified person for the position that he currently holds. Even the position when I worked for him, he was a chief deputy, and probably the most unqualified that I've ever worked for as chief deputy. But he knows people, and in CDCR they are on, and you all have seen it if you pay attention to my podcast. They're on the Friends and Family program in CDCR headquarters, and that's how promotions are received there. And Beatis, the one who started the investigation about the EEO complaint against Burkhart, I've worked with her, and I'll say this, and in all fairness, I liked her. I worked well for her. I thought she was okay, but I also saw a person who was very inexperienced in the job that she had. She was a chief deputy warden at the time. Disagreed with her many times on actions she would take against staff. What I respected about her is that she would at least listen to what I had to say, and we always got along. So I guess what that means is that I see her as a very inexperienced person for the position that she had, and nobody gives a shit about my position. I've got 28 years, and I actually worked the line. I worked every position that you can imagine, from officer all the way up to associate warden. I spent 10 years as an associate warden, so I've seen a lot of different people in charge, and I think Benavidez was probably one of the most inexperienced people, probably right in line with Lozano, to hold the position of chief deputy at the time. And that was, well, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago. I don't remember. But these people, they move up really quick. They go from chief deputy to, next thing you know, they're running entire divisions of CDCR. And that's the problem. I mean, and I'm kind of getting off on a rant, but I think it's appropriate for this situation. Is her husband, Kelly Harrington, and he's probably a nice guy, and he's doing everything he can, and he's retired, but he still has a lot of, well, actually, I don't know if he still works for the department as a retired annuitant or not. I know he did for a period of time, but there's a lot of pull with some of these people because they've given a lot of breaks. They've given a lot of help to people on their way up who currently hold positions in CDCR at very high levels. So these people, they're like almost inbred at the very top, and they do everything they can to support each other. And this just screams of one of those situations. And like I say, I like Benavides. I do. And I think most of the time when she doesn't have outside pressures and interference, I think she does the right thing. But I think that they're absolute with her and Lozano, there is a connection there. She worked with Lozano, and you know it better than I do, that history. But her and Lozano worked together from early on as captains, AWs, up the chain. So when you have each other's back and you cover for each other, there becomes this like unholy alliance where, okay, Jared, you shit the bed when you didn't do anything on this referral by Burkhart to take action. So now I've got to deal with this EEO issue from the person who is the subject of Burkhart's complaint. And so I'm going to do that. And so I guess that leads us into what happened at that point.
So I'll back up a sec for a little bit of context.
Yeah, please. I kind of went on a rant there. I'm sorry.
All good. So basically, the employee got bad performance and got written up for failure to follow orders. Simple stuff. They file a complaint to, because this person's a talker, so you hear all kinds of stuff. They filed the complaint They filed the complaint to forestall any future issues, right? Try and protect themselves. They actually gathered some memos for that complaint, and through the course of like August and September, and then it didn't go anywhere because there was nothing to it. Every memo that they got said that no, there was no EEO issues. There was a couple memos that said, hey, Burkhart's kind of a jerk. Okay, but there was no EEO stuff, so it didn't go anywhere. But Then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, when I reported her misconduct, all of a sudden, 2 months after it sat and did nothing, so it passed the point when they should have did something, they're like, oh, okay, we're going to turn, this is our opportunity to mess with Burkhart, so let's turn this into an investigation. But now keep in mind that the amount of time that they waited to do that, they already failed to do their job, and deal with the misconduct appropriately. What do they call it? The administrative review process.
Right.
So I re-report it in November. I get put under investigation. Shortly after, about a week or so after that, my boss retires early. They replace her in a month later in December with Jillian Hernandez, a captain from the class action management unit. She comes in. I give her the full briefing on everything that's going on too. And so everybody knows what's up. She knows what's up. Dawn knows what's up. And, as we're talking over the next couple months, they basically immediately come in and they say, I can tell you from my perspective what happened, how it kind of like, how it felt and appeared to me is basically they came in, I believe that they were told by Jared that I was a problem and to get rid of me, because that was how all their behavior seemed. They were very anti-me. Everything I was doing, they were against. They basically took away as much of my authority as possible, put me in a corner, and basically just had me just, sitting there looking at the wall. They canceled her rejection on probation process, which was actually supposed to be a done deal. And their behavior towards me started getting weirder and weirder. And they, as we were talking about stuff, I realized I had serious concerns that they had swept the misconduct under the rug and that they weren't going to do anything with it. Because they would tell me things like, oh, well, we didn't see it. And so I remember I had this conversation multiple times and I was like, so if you didn't see it, it didn't happen. And they, were basically like, they acknowledged it in some way or form.
This was months later. I mean,
yeah, this was like through December, January, February.
Oh yeah, this is almost 6 months later. Yeah, they shit the
So,
bed all the time.
And so, I was like, well, wait a second, just because you didn't see it doesn't mean it didn't happen. So
Right.
if I documented all this stuff, and I had hundreds of pages of documentation surrounding this individual and all our issues with them. And they were just like, well, we didn't see it, so it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So I didn't even know, other than like hearing that there had been a complaint filed against me through the grapevine. I didn't know I was under investigation until March. March of 2023. Wait, is that right? Yeah, I think that's something
23 or 23 or 4.
Oh, excuse me, no, March of 24. Sorry, March of 24, because I didn't even hire her until April of 23.
Yeah.
So March of 24, I get a notice from Office of Internal Affairs that I'm under investigation and I'm the subject of a complaint filed by this individual, this lieutenant.
Right.
So I go into the thing and they're asking, and I find out that it's a subject only interview. So basically, they're going to talk to me, and they're not going to, and that was it. Once they were done talking to me, investigation's over. There's no further follow up. Case closed. Doesn't matter what I say or what I say. So I go into the interview and they're asking me all these questions, and I'm able to disprove several of the claims just right off the bat. And I'm giving them all detailed information. They're just like, yeah. And then we get to a point where we're talking about the employee, and I kind of run through everything that had occurred and whatnot. And then I said, oh, by the way, this employee is also currently under investigation for termination level misconduct. And the investigator looked at me and he was stunned, and he was like, okay. And so one sec. You can just go around the back. Where was that? Okay, so the investigator was shocked, and he stopped the investigation, took a break. So he obviously went and did some.
He called somebody. Yeah, he called somebody. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Came back and immediately concluded the interview, and that was it. There was nothing else to talk about. And I was like, okay. So that was on March 11th. 2 days later, because he obviously called somebody, Jared Lozano authored a completely fictitious document that said, we received a report about possible misconduct, pending the administrative review process. You are being temporarily reassigned out of your unit, and we'll notify you the outcome of the administrative review process. So
this is about 6 months later after the initial EEO complaint.
Yep. Yeah. Or 6 months, at least 6 months after that. Now, almost about 6 months after I reported her misconduct.
Yeah. Well, and the reason the correlation between the EEO, so when there's an EEO complaint, it's on the department to make sure that if anything is happening, is to separate the individuals who are having the issue. Now, I'm not saying that was happening, but what I'm saying is that the fact that it took 6 months and all this other shit was going on just demonstrates to me that this was not really about the EEO complaint. It was about it was really about the document that you sent up about her trying to essentially steal or defraud the state out of $2,500, $3,000.
Yeah, and I realized, and of course I didn't learn a lot of these things until I actually got served with the adverse action down the road, and which didn't happen until June. But I realized when I reported that, and then 2 days later, Jared Lozano kicks me out of my unit. Now, if there had been a problem between me and the employee that was so bad that I needed to be moved, I'd have been moved a long time ago.
Exactly.
So Jared Lozano authors it. That was like on a Friday. On a Monday, Benavides calls me in her office and says, you're being moved out of your unit. You're going from and we were at the headquarters building. You're going from your unit across the hall to the high security mission, and you're going to help them until further notice. So I go over to the high security mission, and, kind of like the issues that have been happening, there were still things going on and stuff that was occurring. And, there was a point where I was just done with it. And I made a full report to OIA of everything that had been going on. And I made a separate full report and complaint to Office of Civil Rights in the department about everything, and did all these long reports and said all the stuff. And everybody said that they were going to do the right thing and, give me my protections that
they don't.
Whistleblower protections, which actually don't exist, but
no, they're all under the same umbrella, OCR and OIA. As long as they're under the umbrella of CDCR, what I learned, and it took me a while, is that you don't, when it involves higher level people, you don't get justice. You just don't.
No. So I made those complaints, and when those complaints finally kind of got looked into enough to where they were forwarded to Director Broomfield for action, nothing happened. But actually, here was the interesting part. Each time I reported something, then more retaliation happened. So Broomfield, he got the report, and then like within a day or two, or right about the same day, I got temporarily reassigned again, this time by Benavidez, and she reassigned me from headquarters over to CSP SAC. Now, at the time, there was plenty of open headquarter positions, so there was no reason to reassign me to a prison. It really didn't make any sense. And at this point, now this is May, I still hadn't heard back on the first temporary reassignment in the administrative review process, which I knew only took 30 days for the most part.
Right.
And so to me, that was like, okay, I do something. I basically, what happened is, when I made that statement during the investigation, during my interview in March, and they looked into it, this was documented too, they found out that no one had reported that misconduct. They realized that Mona Houston, Don Laurie, Jared Lozano, Jillian Hernandez, everybody knew about it, but nobody reported it as they were required.
Exactly.
And so they put it under the rug for 6 months. So now they were kind of in panic mode, because they're like, oh, we gotta clean this up. But in the meantime, this guy's giving us trouble, so we got to mess with him some more.
Yeah, that was, I think you figured it all out at this point. That was the issue, is Lozano and whoever else was at the top then shit the bed and never reported anything. I mean, you provided them with a very thorough and complete document that detailed, a lieutenant trying to defraud the state out of a significant amount of money, and it's warranting termination, and they did nothing with it. They did nothing with it.
Here was the thing. Here was the thing about it too, is even if nothing came out of it before the investigation. Oh, so caveat. When I got served my adverse action, it actually detailed in there what I reported to him. And then it also detailed, then apparently a month after it was reported to him in April, then all of a sudden Benavidez, she stepped in to help out Jared, and she referred the misconduct I reported. She finally referred it to OIA for investigation. So I reported in October. It didn't actually get to OIA until April the next year.
Yeah. So so they completely shit the bed on the time frames, and that's what Lozano was trying to avoid, is essentially putting him on Front Street by not doing anything about it. Because OIA, let's talk about that. Why that 30 days is important is OIA is inundated with investigations. They only have a certain number of investigators. They get a lot of referrals, and they have a lot of people they need to interview. The caseloads, I'm sure, is pretty high. So what they do is they create this 30-day requirement that if you if you determine that there is misconduct by a staff member, we give you 30 days from the time you find out to put together a package, and it's called a 989. Put together this package and submit it to us so we can review it and determine what we're going to do. They may come back and say, hey, this is direct action. You provide us adequate information for you to go ahead and take direct action against this staff member, or they'll say no action at all because there's not enough information there, or we don't, whatever. Or they'll say, no, we're going to pick this up and we're going to conduct our own investigation of it. And they have a certain amount of time. Now, in this case, while there is certainly, if you go by rule of law, there is criminal behavior is normally 3 years. But I can guarantee you with 100% assurity that they never looked at this like a criminal case. Okay. They always looked at it as just a case of misconduct, and that gives them a year. So OIA looks at it and says, listen, you shit the bed. You for 6 months, you did absolutely nothing. And that falls right back on Lozano, because he's the only consistent person who was in place throughout the whole entire process. You had changes in your leadership and changes in Lozano's leadership that took place, and nothing was done. But he was there. He was supposed to pick up the slack. He was supposed to ensure things got done, and he didn't do it. Now the connection between Lozano and Benavidez is clear. I mean, they worked together as way down when they were AW's captains and what have you. So now you've got the friends and family program that I speak about with Lozano and Benavidez, and Benavidez comes in and she's going to try and clean it up for Lozano so he doesn't get his ass in too much trouble, because he's still trying to get somewhere. Whatever rank he is, he ain't at the top yet. So that's what they all think when they get into headquarters is, how do I get that next promotion? Because it's all a power trip on with all of them, is how do I get to the next promotion? And when you shit the bed on, and I would assume, I have really no way of knowing this, but I would assume that there's very few real investigations that take place in headquarters. I mean, most of I don't really know, but there's not a lot of employees in headquarters compared to institutions. So I would imagine there's not a lot of investigations. But when you can't manage to do a simple 989, when a clear case of fraudulent behavior gets referred to you, and you shit the bed and can't manage it within 6 months, they're looking at you as the problem. And Lozano knew enough to know, hey, I don't want to ride this out, and I've got to figure out a story that covers my ass. And the EEO complaint against Burkhart, even though it's nothing, and they admitted it was nothing by not doing anything with it for 6 months. When you do nothing on an EEO complaint for 6 months, you're basically saying there's nothing to it. All right. Because nothing changed in 6 months. They talked to you. They found out. And the only thing that the investigator found out was there's this whole other investigation going on against the complainant that could potentially lead to the individual getting terminated. He had no idea, which he should have known. But he did not know.
Hey, can we take a can we?
Yeah. You need a break?
Can we take a pause real quick?
Yeah. Started again. We'll get back to Burkhart and where we left off. Go ahead, brother.
I think we left off somewhere around, kind of like some of the stuff was going on. Well, yeah. So basically I reported this misconduct to Lozano and those guys, and all they had to do was send it to OIA. Nice and simple. But for whatever reason, they decided to, sweep it under the rug and ignore it, and then, mess with me for reporting it. And I was like, I'm literally doing what you guys are telling me to do, and now I'm being punished for it. And it didn't matter what I said or what I did. But yeah, they ended up, I went to that interview in March. basically exposed their cover up. And then a month later, they finally referred it. Benavidez was helping out Lozano and finally referred it for investigation. But yeah, they moved me out of my unit. I reported a bunch of stuff that was going on. I filed my own EEO complaint. And the only thing that happened was basically I reported misconduct. I made an EEO complaint. I reported stuff to OIA, and they just retaliated against me every single time. And the really sad part was when I reported the retaliation, all it got me was more retaliation. I mean, Director Broomfield was aware of everything, and he chose to do nothing. And what it really taught me was you see all these flyers and all these things and all this information, whistleblower protection and all this and all that. And the simple fact is it doesn't exist because
No.
I mean, I learned two big things. First was one of the places that put up a lot of the flyers and information is the Office of Inspector General. Well,
right.
They can't give you any whistleblower protection. They can't protect you from retaliation because they have no authority.
No.
Yeah, no enforcement powers.
100%. Correct.
The other thing I learned is that when it comes to CDCR, there's no whistleblower protection unless someone wants to give it to you. So, for instance, I had talked to Broomfield and sent him several emails and said, hey, this kind of bad stuff is happening. Jared Lozano's the one who's doing it. Protect me. And he did nothing. So at that point, the guy who's supposed to protect you doesn't protect you. Then all you can really do is keep going up the chain. And if you go all the way up to the secretary and the secretary doesn't want to do anything, then nothing gets done. OCR doesn't have the ability to protect you. Office of Internal Affairs doesn't have the ability to protect you. And even if those guys technically did, they don't.
Yeah,
they just do whatever the hiring authority tells them.
They all still work for CDCR, though.
Right.
OCR is still part of CDCR. That's how they keep everything and everyone in line. Is they're part of, they create these supposedly autonomous departments that act on their own, and they can do this, that, and the other, and they'll protect you. But if they still report up essentially the same chain of command, and report to the same people, well, that's not really helpful, and that's what they do.
Like for example, right? I went through all this stuff with OCR, both in person and in writing, and they were shocked. But at the end of the day, they just sent it all to Broomfield.
Yeah.
Who's
exactly.
Boss,
same person. Yeah, same person.
Friends and family, And so it's like Broomfield, he could do something, but he chose not to.
Right.
OIA, for example, I corresponded and worked with Steven Serta and Curtis Aronson in OIA, and I reported additional misconduct to those guys. Now, those guys, because OIA is on a separate area of the department, they have their own director.
Yeah.
They could have stepped up. They could have went to their director. They could have went to the secretary and said, hey, man, we're not doing our job. We're not providing this person with the lawful protections they're required to have. And here's the thing. Whether my complaints of retaliation were true or not, there still should have been an immediate stop and to say, okay, whatever is or isn't going on, you're not doing nothing else to this employee. You're going to put him, if he's not in a position comparable to where he was, you're going to put him back in one.
Right.
So yeah, they basically ended up doing a few other really horrific things and like legit illegal things where I caught them in writing, dead to rights, violating California government code, violating the law, POBAR, and they ended up permanently transferring me, kicking me out of my position, saying it didn't exist anymore, and permanently transferring me to CSP SAC. And, so I went through the ringer for about a year, and then I finally, I do want to give a shout out to the OIA side of the house director, Chris Chambers. He was the only person to step in and do the right thing, and he helped me out and helped get me out of the horrible situation that they put me in, and I got to spend my last few months in the department, working for the OAK, Office of Audits and Correctional Compliance or something like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I kind of hung out with
So
those guys for a few minutes.
put you in a better situation than you were. Well, that's good. The whole situation, it's unfortunately, it's just not surprising at all.
No, it's not.
When you deal to me, the main character in this is Lozano. And knowing Lozano, and he's a dishonorable person to start out with. I used to listen to him call high level. This was when Kathy Allison was the Secretary of Corrections. Her a piece of shit, and it just basically anybody in headquarters a piece of shit. That was his term. Anybody who knows him will know. He says this a lot. They're a piece of shit. They're a piece of shit. That's what he says. And then he gets, but there is, how would I say this? Is the guy has that attitude. He has very little actual correctional line experience. And anybody who's worked with him understands that he's not a very knowledgeable person. At least he wasn't when I worked with him.
He's not. He's very egotistical. You remember? You remember the thing that occurred back at DVI where he well, you may not remember, but he was a captain back at DVI, and he put this inmate in the cell.
Yep, I know where you're going. Yeah, and the guy got murdered.
Yeah. Well, there was another video put out on one of the other prominent websites that are talking about the department, and there was this inmate Lovely, and he did the same thing to that guy too. Lozano's just the guy.
Let's cover that for 1 second. And the guy, my understanding is the guy came in wanting to essentially PC up, and Lozano. Go ahead.
That was actually a different one.
So we got more than one. Okay. So he's got a few body. Yeah, his body counts higher than what we know. I know.
There was it's this one about inmate Lovely, and basically Lozano. The guy got himself in trouble in prison a couple different times, and everybody said, "Hey, this dude's no good. He can't go on the line anymore." And Lozano basically said, "Hey, I talked to the guy for 2 seconds. He said he was fine. Put him out there." And everybody was like, "No!" And he said, "Do it anyways. I'm the boss." So
Yeah. And what happened to the guy?
Of course, he got brutally murdered.
Yeah.
Shocker.
So that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's Lozano. He makes decisions that he doesn't really. He makes decisions out of I'm the boss versus what is the information I have here and the best thing to do for whether it's the inmate, the staff, or the situation. It's I'm the boss, put him out there. And he just doesn't get it. He doesn't fucking get it. And that's what I experienced with the dude. And you gotta, like you say, you gotta lead him down the road, but he's not really very easy to lead. He just doesn't know what he's doing.
He has a huge ego based on his 2 minutes of actually working the line.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy got promoted to sergeant. He just barely had over 2 years in when he got promoted to sergeant. Yeah. And then he spent a ton of time at headquarters. And then next time he kind of really touches down at an institution doing actual work, he's a captain. And at that time, his ego was so inflated, and he gets his first murder under his belt and didn't get held accountable for that, really. And so, it just goes from there. And then when you have people that are supporting you and putting in good words for you and getting you promotions when everybody in the department hates you, your ego just gets bigger. I mean, why wouldn't it?
Well, he thinks he has been. He has been untouchable. He's been untouchable. So, and that's my beef with the department. And one thing I've been bringing up on my podcast is, I call it the Friends and Family program, is I would like somebody to pay attention and actually do an in-depth review of the people that are in high level positions, who they're connected to, and you just have to talk to people and offline and say and ask them, because I know, and we'll talk about me for 1 second. I interviewed 5 times for chief. I was ranked number 1 on the chief list. The 5 times that I interviewed. Now I have 28 years in corrections. From all my time was, with the exception of about 18 months, was on the line from officer to captain. And I'm ranked 1. The 5 times I interviewed, every single time there was a connection between the person that got hired and the associate director that was doing the interviews. There was a connection there, and I was told many on well, one of I will 100% admit I interviewed for a position at headquarters, which I really didn't want. And I shit the bed on that one really bad, and that was fine. I didn't want the job really anyways. But the other ones, I can't remember where they all were at, but one of them was at San Quentin, and doesn't matter. They're all connected, and that's what's going on at headquarters. Is they're all connected, just like with you, the Benavides, Lozano. They're all connected, and they all protect each other. And there's a complete disconnect between headquarters and out in the field. They're not really supporting the staff out in the field. They're supporting each other. And if you ended up just being, one of the bodies they buried because they had to, protect one another. Lozano, in this case, he completely screwed up every single way possible. You can screw up a potential investigation on a staff member defrauding the state. And who's out of a job? I mean, you're not out of a job, you're retired, but he's still there. Nothing happened to him. Nothing happened to him.
It was concerning for a while, because there were times when I was convinced that they were definitely trying to fire me. The only thing that saved me was that the gun they pointed at me had bad ammo. So, it didn't really work. I mean, well, they grazed me, but that was it. But man, it was the best part for me was when I actually got the investigation paperwork and they gave me everything. Mm-hmm. They literally handed me all the evidence of their wrongdoing. Like they fully documented. Oh yeah, everything you said was true, and these guys didn't do any of the things that they were supposed to do. And here's the proof, by the way.
Yeah, Well, I'll tell you just real quick about. So as I was, towards the end of my career, I had reported a warden for some significant violations of policy, almost criminal. And within 2 weeks of me reporting him, I was under investigation too.
Of course, that's what they do.
I was working with OIA. I mean, when I called OIA to, because I had finally I'd had enough. And I actually told the warden in a meeting that I was going to do it, because I like to be out front. It's like, dude, I'm going to call OIA, and wherever the shit lands, it lands. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, because whether you tell them or not, they're going to find out 2 seconds later because homeboy's going to call them.
So he told me, do whatever call whoever you want to call. And I said, well, I had already done it, to be honest, but he didn't know that. But within 2 weeks, he was the hiring authority, and then I was under investigation. And whole different scenario, but I mean, nothing really happened. They gave me training on some bullshit. I had cussed somebody out on the street who had cussed me out. And that person knew he knew that I worked for corrections. So he was mad at me. So he had a friend who worked for PIA, and they told him how to report me. But yeah, that's all that happened. He worked for me. Yeah,
that blows my mind. Because here's the thing: you shouldn't be able to. I mean, there should be no mechanic or even ability to discipline any employee for cursing anywhere. Because I have literally heard every single employee at every single level openly curse in meetings and public
Yeah.
forums and all of
Yeah.
this multiple times.
Well,
And it's like,
that's that's the
come
funny
on.
part. That's the funny part is during the interview with OIA, I said, "What are you guys the language police now? Because if you are, follow me around for a week or two. I'll keep you real fucking busy." I didn't say fucking. I gotta admit,
Yeah.
I'll
But
keep you
you
real
would,
busy. And they laughed.
you wouldn't get past the entrance building. You'd be writing up so many people
Yeah,
for cursing.
exactly. But yeah, that was the issue, and it was pretty laughable. But he was literally grasping at that point, and I knew it, but I needed to take advantage of the error. And so when I called the OIA, it was like, okay, now I'm under investigation. Okay, whatever. And they were like, no, no, no. Because when I called, we're kind of getting into my deal now, but when I called them on what was happening, they were like, dude, you are literally putting the pieces of the puzzle together that we've been looking for. We've been looking at this guy for a while, and you're confirming everything that we thought was happening. And so I knew then I was in solid that my deal, they were already looking at him. My deal was bigger than whatever they could come up with me. So I wasn't really worried about it. And
Well,
as
see,
it turned out, I didn't need to be. So,
right. And the funny thing about that stuff is the reason that warden even started to get into trouble is because not because he did stuff
friends
wrong.
and family.
Yeah, he upset somebody at some point, and they're like,
Yeah.
okay, because realistically, most of the discipline in the department is selective. They wait until either you do something so egregious that they can't ignore it, or you piss somebody off, and then they find something and they use it to get you, even though everybody else is doing the same thing every day all the time, and it's not an issue. It's like the cursing thing, right? Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Crazy.
sad. I mean, it was very disappointing for me. I mean, because I was totally disgusted by the fact that this employee was doing this, and they weren't even hiding their tracks. It was so easy to find them. I mean, I literally told them, what all the process, and so if they had listened to me and paid attention, they'd have knew that their lack of work was easily trackable.
Yeah.
But they did this
Didn't
super
realize
dishonest thing while they're on probation. And then I report it to the people that are supposed to do stuff, and nobody does anything. And then it goes to the director, and you think, well, the director's going to step in. I mean, if the director had did nothing more than just stop what was happening to me, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. I actually would have probably stayed through, instead of retiring in April, I probably would have stayed through the end of this year, if I had,
it's sad they lose good employees because they just don't treat people well. It's sad, but that's what they do. And there needs to be a big, and if you'll, if you listen to my podcast in the future, I'm actually starting. I didn't start this podcast to be in a negative, I guess, advocate, so to speak, of CDCR. I didn't really want to talk about I wanted to tell stories about my own career. But what really changed gears for me was interacting with CDCR and their arrogance and lack of transparency. When they claim transparency, and they absolutely do everything they can to prevent transparency. So then I'm like, okay, well, I got that. And so now let's, and this is what I told CDCR communications is, you are the story now. I'm asking you about a situation, but your failure to provide any information and you're covering up the situation now becomes the story. Yep. So then I get, further deep into things, and I get people contacting me, like, we ended up, touching bases, and some other folks have, and I know some of the dirty shit that they've done. I mean, I've had my own stories that I've talked about, but they really need.
There's people coming out of the woodwork left and right because there's so much stuff going on. I mean, I literally saw more misconduct and more serious misconduct in my last year and a half in the department, working at headquarters, than I ever saw anywhere else. And I've seen some pretty crazy stuff, but it was just, it blew my mind. I mean, you know, for me, it was really laughable because, you know, I worked in this, I set up this Public Records Act unit. So I know what the department is and isn't supposed to give out and things, and how they kind of do all those shenanigans behind the scenes there. But then when they moved me out the first time, they moved me over to the high security mission. And within like the first week, I saw and read some crazy stuff that just blew my mind, because I was like, how is this even happening at this day and age? I mean, they sat me down and had me do homicide reviews. And those, you know, aside from the ones that were just straight inmate caused stuff that were pretty disturbing, the staff stuff was even more deeply disturbing. And it was it was crazy. I didn't even do very many. It blew my mind.
Right now, I'm working, and we're kind of getting off of your story a little bit, but I think this is a good conversation. Is right now I'm working on a subject. I call it the murder chair, because it probably pisses CDCR off. But you know what I'm talking about, probably, is where they strap the dude to the chair, and then they have the two Hispanics go up, get weapons out of a cell, and then they just stab the fuck out of the dude.
CSP SAC, their little learning thing. I actually worked there for, well, I only actually physically worked there for about 2 months, but I don't think they have those anymore. But
they have them. They do still have them.
I am not positive.
At some prisons. I don't know about CSP SAC, but you can't get in any information, and that's where I'm interested in your background as public information. I'm probably going to be hitting you up in the future.
We could definitely do a very nice in-depth public records related thing, especially when it comes to video, because people have no idea how much they can actually get from the department.
Well, that's what I'm talking about, brother. We're going to talk for sure, because I'm asking for just policy right now, and I can't get it. It's like they're just not. They're not giving me what I'm at. So my question was, and we're getting way off track here, but we're going with it. My question was, with the murder chair, simple question, did they change policy after the murder of the inmate? That was, you know, obviously everybody knows about.
Yeah. What was your operational procedure? Yeah,
exactly.
What was your operational procedure at the
Before
time? And what is
after.
it now?
It's like, I can't get it. You know, they're fucking me around on it.
Yeah, and they don't. When you put in the public records request, I mean, that's an easy to get thing. That should only take a couple weeks, no problem. I get that they're busy and stuff, but that's an easy one. You're probably not going to have to do any redactions, or if you do, it's going to be very minimal, because they can't deny you the document. They would simply only be able to redact the safety and security stuff, which is very, very minimal, by the way.
So we'll be talking offline a little bit. I won't bug you too much, but when I have questions, I'll probably hit you up, because I've had a terrible time with Terry Hardy in communications. I don't think she likes to hear. I know she doesn't like to hear from me.
So funny thing about that, right, is they have an office of public records, right, where they took a bunch of the smaller units and combined them into one. But OPEC, they kind of still are kind of a little Lone Ranger-ish on that stuff. But believe it or not, and this was one of the most coincidental, non-coincidental things, is when they created that new unit. Guess who ended up being made the boss of that new unit? Jared Lozano's wife.
Oh my God!
And come on, friends and family. She didn't get that.
Friends and family, right there. Friends and family.
She got a big promotion to the it's a appointed position over the head of the Office of Research, or not Office of Research, Office of Public Records. And she got some homeboy hookup help with that.
I want to go through. You know what? I'm gonna do this. I want to go through every position, and I don't even know who these people are, but I want to go through every position in headquarters, and I want to find out who their connections are with, you know,
Mm.
and I think that would be really interesting for people to know. It's probably going to take me some time to get through it, but
Yeah.
people are going to speak up. I got to get my podcast a little bit bigger. But people are reaching out now and giving me some great information, and I want that to continue. But like I say, man, before, and I just put this on, on one of my posts for my podcast, is I had a great career. I enjoyed it. The people, sometimes I didn't enjoy the people I worked for, but the Department of Corrections is fantastic. The department itself, it's the people that destroy it. It's the people that run it, that they destroyed it for me. Obviously, protecting the public and keeping criminals in prisons is a significant service that we do for the public. But the amount of shenanigans that goes on in headquarters and the way they treat people is nothing short of just insanity.
Well, like most of us say, our the majority of our stress and problems and issues we have at work, it's not with the inmates, it's with all the people we work with.
I never look back and think of my worst day in corrections was a day. I mean, certainly where my partners were hurt and things like that, I think about. But my most aggravating and worst days were with supervisors who just refused to do the right thing,
And that was a lot.
Yeah,
That happened a lot.
Tremendous amount. And it all, once I got up, because I started at Calipat, way down south, and the closer you get to headquarters, the worse it gets. The absolute worse it gets. And when you're up in it, I mean, it's crazy. And I worked in headquarters for about 6 months. I volunteered to do it. I was in an acting captain position, but it's like dog eat dog there. All they're worried about is promoting to the next position and talking shit about each other, and it just like, I'm like, where?
You are 100% on that. It's mind blowing. I mean, in the I think I worked at headquarters for about like a total of maybe 5 years, give or take. And the stuff I saw in the different positions I worked, it blew my mind, and it was happening all the time, and high level people, medium level people, and nobody cared and nobody did anything. I mean, bosses sleeping with their employees.
Oh my God,
and booking trips that the state's paying for.
I got a
Man,
great story about somebody who is currently a very, very high level, in a very, very high level position, and this is where the friends and family come in, that if you're a friends and family, you get to ignore shit. And this individual in very high level walked in on an AW who used to be in headquarters, was demoted due to an EEO issue, walked in on him kissing his secretary and did nothing. Okay.
Of course they didn't.
We worked at the same joint it happened at, and we only worked at one together, and nothing was done. And kissing his secretary, and the individual didn't report it, didn't do anything, but she told somebody, and I found out. And it's just if that, and this same individual would refer to one of the captains that worked for me, was probably one of the hardest working people I've ever worked with. I mean, this guy would work literally 12, 14 hours a day, hard working, never had a negative thing to say about anybody. but he made the mistake of dating one of her friends and then just breaking up with her, just breaking up. Hey, it's not working out. I'm out. And that was, she referred to him as a Neanderthal after that, and was, crazy shit, but that's the people they promote, is with that kind of ideology. And the things that she did following, I mean, she just completely ignores it because she was friends with that individual. All she chewed him out. She said, don't put me in this position anymore, blah, blah, blah. But hello, he's already demonstrated the kind of individual he is, because he was bounced out of headquarters at a deputy director position and was sent to CHCF. And then he gets caught again, and she chooses not to say anything. What I mean, I don't know. Just crazy. But yeah, I didn't intend on telling that story, but I did. So cat's out of the bag. So it wouldn't be hard to figure out who it is. But yeah. So hey man, I'm talking your ear off. I really appreciate you coming on today. Is there anything else you want to clarify, talk about, or anything you want to get off your chest before we conclude this podcast?
Nah, I think we covered it. Yeah. And keep in mind too, the stuff that I went over was like some of the bullet points, and there's always so much more to a story than what people hear most of the time. And man, there was, that was the majority, most of the big bullet points of kind of what happened. And, it basically came down to, I uncovered serious misconduct, stuff that's actual crime. Yeah. And I got brutalized for it, and when I asked for help, the people that are the people in areas that are supposed to help you, they didn't help you, and when I pointed out lies and inconsistencies and just all this bad stuff that was going on there, it was just all I got was crickets.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, we sent it to somebody, and I was like, well, yeah, but they're not doing anything. Now what? And they're like, nothing.
Well, like I said earlier, is we've worked together, and I knew you well enough. I want to say you might have been a lieutenant, sergeant and lieutenant. Did you promote to lieutenant at CHF?
I did. When I transferred there, it was as a promotion.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, and I knew you at that level, and I always thought of you as just being as, the term square isn't correct, because that's, I don't want to, being just straightforward business only. So when you told me about the EEO thing, I was like, oh, this is complete bullshit. Because you that's the way you are, is just, and to me, that's a good thing. So I knew it was bullshit, and I'm glad you're able to kind of get it out, on this podcast, and hopefully, if that's the only thing you're able to do, hopefully you feel better about the situation, and I appreciate you coming on for sure. You're kind of froze up right now, bro. Looks like we lost connection with you. Oop, yeah, we definitely lost connection. Well, that was Brent Burkhart, and we lost connection at the very end. Hope y'all enjoyed his story. And that's all I got for you today. We're going to play our way out of this on the red, white, and ruthless thing.